Hello there. Pull up a chair and let the screen door slam behind you. I've got a pitcher of sweet tea sweating on the table and a story that's been burning a hole in my heart for far too long. My name is Martha, and I've lived in this white farmhouse at the end of the dirt road for 42 years. I've seen the oaks grow from saplings into giants, and I've seen the paint peel off this porch more times than I can count. For the last 5 years, this house has been very, very quiet. You see, my 3 children, David, Sarah, and young Mark, all found lives in the big city. They became busy people with shiny cars, expensive watches, and calendars filled with meetings I couldn't understand. I used to call them every Sunday, but mostly I just talked to their voicemail machines. "Hi, Mom, can't talk now. I'll call you back," they would say, but the callback never came. Last Thanksgiving, I sat here with a store-bought chicken and a small side of mashed potatoes, eating alone in the dark. I wasn't angry, I was just invisible. I was a ghost haunting my own hallways, a woman who had outlived her usefulness to the world. But everything changed 3 months ago, on a Tuesday morning that smelled like rain and old cedar. I was digging in the back garden near the old well that my grandfather dug back in the 30s. My shovel hit something hard, something metallic that didn't sound like a rock. It was an old rusted ammunition box, the kind soldiers used to carry. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were 3 heavy, dirty bars of solid gold. I didn't tell a soul at first, but secrets have a way of leaking out in a small town like a leaky faucet. Within 48 hours, the news had traveled from the post office to the diner and finally over the state line. Suddenly, the phone that had been silent for years started ringing so much I thought it might explode. David was the first to arrive, pulling into the gravel driveway in a cloud of dust. He didn't even mention the gold at first. He just hugged me and said he had been missing my home cooking. The next day, Sarah arrived with a bouquet of expensive lilies and a suitcase packed for a month. She told me she had realized that family is the only thing that truly matters. Finally, Mark showed up, the baby of the family, suddenly very concerned about the leak in my roof and the weeds in my flower bed. For the first time in a decade, my kitchen was full of noise and the smell of roasting beef. But as I sat at the head of the table, watching them laugh and pass the gravy, I felt a cold shiver in my soul. I looked at their faces I had kissed when they were scraped and bruised, and I saw something new. I saw them glancing toward the basement door, their eyes searching for the glint of yellow metal. They weren't here for Martha, they were here for the box. They were being so kind, so attentive, but it felt like a play being performed by actors who hadn't learned their lines. David fixed the fence, Sarah painted the shutters, and Mark spent 3 days clearing the brush from the creek. Every night they would sit with me and ask, "Mom, where exactly did you say you found that old treasure?" I would just smile, sip my tea, and tell 'em that my memory wasn't what it used to be. I watched them for weeks, performing the roles of the perfect children. I realized that I had finally found the currency that bought their attention. It wasn't my love or my history or the way I used to tuck 'em in at night. It was the promise of a payday. It's a bitter thing to realize your children have a price tag. One evening, as the sun was dipping below the horizon and the cicadas were starting their song, I gathered them on this very porch. I had the ammunition box sitting right there on the table, covered with a kitchen towel. They sat on the edge of their seats, their breath held tight in their chests. I told 'em about the years of silence, the birthdays spent alone, and the holidays where the only guest was the evening news. I told them that the loneliest place in the world is a house full of memories and empty of people. Then I pulled back the towel. There were the 3 bars, shining dimly in the twilight. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what to do with this gold, I said, my voice steady. And I realized that this gold has already done its greatest work. It brought my children home. It made you remember that I exist. But gold is a heavy thing, and it has a way of making people lose their way. I watched David reach out his hand just a few inches from the box. I stood up and took the box to the edge of the porch. I don't want this gold to be the only reason you visit me, I said. And then I did something that made them all gasp in horror. I walked down to the old well and dropped the box straight down into the black water. Splash! The sound echoed through the yard like a closing door. The gold is back where it belongs, I told him, turning back with a smile. But the dinner is still in the oven, and I've got plenty of tea left. The question is, are you staying for the food, or are you leaving because the box is gone? Sarah started to cry, and David looked at the floor, his face turning a deep shade of red. Mark looked at the well, then back at me, and for the first time he really saw me. He saw the woman who had sacrificed everything to give them a life, only to be forgotten when that life became successful. That was 3 weeks ago. David left the next morning, muttering about a meeting he couldn't miss. Sarah stayed for 2 days, but she spent most of it on her phone before she made an excuse about her cat. But Mark is still here. He's out back, actually, fixing that old tractor that hasn't run since 2012. He hasn't mentioned the well once. He realized that the real gold wasn't in the box, it was in the time we have left. I may be an old woman, but I'm not a fool. I know that most of the world would choose the metal over the person every single time. But I've learned that a quiet house is better than a house full of ghosts and greed. And for those of you sitting on your porches today, wondering why the phone isn't ringing, don't go digging for gold in your garden. Just be the gold yourself and let the dust settle where it may. The ones who stay for the tea are the only ones who ever mattered. Anyway, I think I hear the timer on the stove going off. It's just a simple peach cobbler today, but it tastes better than any treasure I could have ever dug out of the ground. God bless you all, and keep your hearts light.